Awimbawe, 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 awimbawe,
Oh, in the jungle, the mighty jungle, the lion sleeps tonight. Oh, in the jungle, the mighty jungle, the lion sleeps tonight. Aye.
Hey,
Hey.
audio peaked fucking hard there.
My audio peaked, so there you go.
Very nice. Welcome back to 2MoreTakes, everybody. It's been a year. Oh my god. How long has it been, Joe?
We're aging.
A year it's been. It's been a year and all of the problems of the world are still here in the exact form we left them. So I think what we've come to the conclusion is that 2MoreTakes has not solved world peace. And that is a disappointment because that was my intention at least going in. Fuck all this film criticism bullshit. Welcome everybody to the fucking anniversary episode. It has been 1 year since we started the podcast, and it's also around New Year's time. So
Yeah, I
fucking
guess
pop out your hats,
Happy
your
New
stringers.
Year, people.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some movies.
Yes, but before we do that, my name is Jack,
My name is Joe.
and we are a pair of bros.
Or hose.
Or hose, yeah. I was going to go with hose, but I use that one too often. Anyway, the anniversary episode. We're going to talk about some movies. But which ones specifically, Joe? What kind of movies more specifically? Because there's two criteria that are quite special about these.
Yeah, today we're hitting some areas that we've mentioned one similar film, but we haven't really hit this genre before of animated stuff.
Yes.
Like, we haven't really done much of that yet, so we picked a couple of films that we both really enjoyed.
I think we consider them favourites in a way.
Yeah.
At least our picks.
Yeah, because I think the problem was we'd done a lot of our, especially for me, a lot of my favourites have already been done, or ones that we, were coming to later. But
we
now,
did a very Joe-heavy year in terms of live-action favourite movies this year. We did a few of mine, to be fair, but I think the thing is that obviously the big looming one that we have we've not done yet.
And there's a couple
and
I
don't think we'll ever do it, to be quite honest. And of course, I'm referring to Stargate. Anyway, we're talking about two of our favourite films. They happen to be animated. That's obviously not just a triviality. They is integral to what they are. But first up, Joe, we're talking about yours. And I think that there's no better man to introduce this than myself.
Well,
Go for it, Joe.
So Disney's a thing, which we've only touched on once before, which was in our previous episode.
I think we've referenced them before that.
Yeah,
because I think
but
we've
haven't.
We've talked about Marvel before.
But Marvel's not the same.
It's been in passing though.
We're talking about
the thing is that,
conventional Disney.
But you think of but the thing is when you associate Disney, you think of that older stuff. But nowadays, what Disney actually is
everything.
a conglomerate that owns so much stuff. It owns one particular science fiction franchise. It owns Marvel. It owns fucking Fox now. And all their X-Men stuff, which is obviously within Marvel, and they own like tons and tons of movie companies and stuff. It's insane.
We're going back to a time where all Disney used to own was your hearts.
Yeah. Before it was your wallets. Yeah.
No, but we're 90s Disney. We just had a little look ourselves. Probably a good prime period for Disney and their animated
it's basically stuff. It is the renaissance of Disney, really. I think from what I've read, they were doing really badly up until that point. Like they had a few hits earlier on in some of the post-war years. Like obviously, Lady and the Tramp was 55, but I think during the sort of 70s and 80s there was a bit of a drought. It might have even started in the 60s, because you had a few things here and there. I think we even looked at one of them was like The Fox and the Hound and stuff like that. There was also like things like that Robin Hood adaptation where it was like animals and stuff like that. And that's not to say that these are bad films, just that they weren't really showstoppers, really.
But you get to the 90s and you got a whole line of Disney films that, we should probably talk about all of them eventually, but, Aladdin, Pocahontas, Beauty and the Beast, and today's special, Lions.
Yes.
The Lion King.
Yes.
No, it's one of my favourite films, really. Especially Disney. It used to be one of my favourite Disney films. I think still is one of my favourite Disney films.
I think it's that and like maybe Aladdin and maybe like Beauty and the Beast. Or maybe not that one, but I think though at least the Aladdin and Lion King are kind of the gold standard.
Yeah, but just a classic animated Disney musical with animals that talk before they made them all CGI and weird.
Well, we can get into that later.
Yeah. No, we're talking about the 1994 original one, not the any remakes here.
Yeah,
okay?
of course. Yeah. Anyone who thought it was otherwise, for fuck's sake.
But yeah, Lion King. I watched this film every day when I was a kid.
Yeah, from the sounds of it, this is one of those ones. It sounds like that you just like one of those films when you're a kid where you just like, I finished rewatching this today. I'm going to rewatch it again the same day.
Oh no, it was just a film I'd have on in the background over and over and over again.
Yeah. Oh no, I remember having that with like films like Dinosaurs and 101 Dalmatians, which are both Disney films as well. I loved the 101 Dalmatians films. I briefly mentioned this last time, I think. I don't know if it got into the episode, but yeah, I do have a history with Disney. I just think that it was probably a little bit less exposure than you, and I didn't really know what Disney was at an earlier age when I was watching these films, and afterwards I kind of grown out of them a little bit.
Well, yeah, I saw every Disney film I had access to, I know off the top of my head, but there are films I never saw. Like, for example, 101 Dalmatians. I've seen the live-action one many times.
Oh, sorry, I was referring to the live-action one. Yeah.
But the animated one, I don't think I've actually seen.
I've seen it a few times.
That
one I saw less so. But I do remember loving it.
Yeah.
I mean, Cruella de Vil in particular is greatly expressed in both of those iterations. I think it's Glenn Close who plays Cruella de Vil in the films, and she's fantastic. And the animated face of Cruella de Vil looks like an emaciated skeleton. It's great.
Yeah. But Lion King.
The point is that you have a very like long history with both Disney, but exclusive more to the point with this film.
Well, yeah. Also, this one I've played these. I did a Scar character in A level for. We did a musical that was Disney themed, so that's. Did
you do the Be Prepared number?
I did do Be Prepared on stage once, so it's Lion King always has to be one of my favourites. But the film itself, I love. The musical numbers in Lion King are iconic anyway, because even the Circle of Life and that opening, people meme all the time anyway. But everyone knows it.
It was like one of those proto memes before meme was a word. Really, it's like. Yeah. It's like, you hold up small thing at like a cliff point or something like that. It's like you're doing the Lion King. Michael Jackson's holding his baby out of a window in Berlin. He's doing the Lion King. In fact, I believe that might have been his reasoning, like internally to do it, or at least his excuse when he was caught by the public holding his newborn baby out of a window in Berlin. So.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I don't think they ever got Michael Jackson to do any Disney stuff.
No.
I guess they had enough sort of like soothsayers at Disney to sort of sense him and go, nope, something's up here.
But you do have obviously Lion King. It's Elton John, isn't it? For a lot of it.
Yes, I recently obviously rewatched this for this podcast, but I was discovering a lot of stuff that I obviously as a kid, even the few times I'd seen bits of Lion King, I just did not notice. So yeah, it's Elton John. I was like, wow, nice. I'm on board.
He wrote at least half the songs in Lion King, didn't he? So.
Yeah. Well, he's a great songwriter, isn't he? So it's the perfect sort of marriage, really, to get him involved with any kind of musical to write, some of the show-stopping, numbers.
You got Circle of Life. You got Can't Wait to Be King. You got Love. What's it called? Can You Feel the Love Tonight?
I don't know. In the Jungle. The Lion Sleeps Tonight, or something.
No, there's two. There's Can You Feel the Love Tonight and In the Jungle, and then...
You know what? It might be a case that was a song from outside of the film.
I think In the Jungle was a song from before, but...
It might be.
I'm pretty sure it's just a song, but...
You know what? This is one of those things where it's like... everybody remembers the song Everybody Walk the Dinosaur, but nobody remembers that it came from the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Oh, yeah.
That's the first appearance of that song, but you would never have remembered that had you not specifically gone, oh my god, that's in that film, I better remember that. But if you were just thinking of the song out of thin air, you would not think that. It's I think it's one of those instances where, because it sounds like a Lion King song, I probably just associate it with that, but
yeah.
I guess, should we get into, plot and characters and that?
Yeah, obviously there's a lot of good songs, but yeah, the story of The Lion King, it's Disney like to do their sort of plays on sort of Shakespearean tragedies, don't they? Really?
Yeah, this is very Hamlet in a way, but without the craziness, and
yeah,
also
just
without
with
Scar shagging Simba's mum.
Well, they had to cut that bit for the kids.
Yeah, and also any references to Nala being Simba's half sister.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, obviously, two brothers. One is king, as he always is. James L. Jones.
The other is gay.
The other is, yes.
Scar is so unbelievably gay, and I love it.
And he's an outcast, because nobody likes...
the gays.
The gay cripples. No, he's, Scar's got a scar, and he looks all creepy, and he's, he's just a bit weird, so no one likes him. But he
sort of relishes in being a bit of a dick.
Yeah.
He's a bit like Hans Gruber. He has that energy to him.
Yeah,
he's also played by Jeremy Irons, who's another British actor. So
British evil, plotting to slay his brother to become king, and probably his brother's son. So that but
the point is, Scar's a bad dude.
Yeah,
dude.
And obviously he has this whole be prepared. He's plotting with his hyena buddies to, we're gonna murder everyone and take over. Which they kind of do. Obviously, you get a lovely opening where everything's nice. Basically, obviously, the stampede scene where Scar lures Simba in, so that Mufasa has to come save him, and Mufasa obviously doesn't make it, but Scar basically kills him. The old "Long live the king" moment.
Yeah, very infamous moment that is fantastic, and we even referenced last time.
Yeah, but I love that scene because that's the one scene where even nowadays I just want to cry every time I see Simba find his dad.
Oh yeah, that's such a sad scene. Yeah,
come on, Dad, we gotta go. Poor little, and they're just little lion cubs, man. No harm came to any of the lions in this film.
We can get into the way that they animate the animals in this as well later, but in that particular scene, just as a quick reference here, the way that they're animating him trying to lift up Mufasa's paws and sort of crawl in between his legs and stuff like that. For warmth and that, it's really effective and emotive, and just it does sort of split your heart in half, really.
Yeah, and then obviously Scar's look what you've done. You better run away, little Simba. And obviously, being a little lion cub, Simba just runs away and leaves Scar to take over. But then you meet, your Timon and Pumbaa, happy-go-lucky little meerkat and warthog duo. Classic. Hakuna Matata, slimy yet satisfying.
Yeah.
And then time passes, Simba grows up, and eventually...
And he turns into a dude, bro.
Well, he turns into Matthew Broderick, actually.
Yeah, well, he turns into Matthew Broderick. But yeah, Simba basically just becomes like Thor from Endgame.
But then he comes back, he runs into Nala again, and he's just like, you gotta come help us. And eventually...
There's no food in the valley.
Oh, and then there's also
dying.
one of my favourite characters, Rafiki, the monkey.
Yes, Rafiki the monkey.
Because he's like, you don't even know who you are. He's trying to get Simba to, believe in himself. And he's like...
Yeah. Oh, the cutaways to Rafiki are great as well, yeah, when he's like... Because he's that fortune teller character, and he's also just very fun to watch when he does interact with the story eventually.
No, I love it. In every scene with Rafiki's really quite upbeat as well. It's just silly. But he's like, And then he's got the whole look into the water. You are, there's a lot of symbolism of the you are your son, your father's son. He should be king, all that. But it's a lovely
his spirit lives in you and stuff like that. Yeah,
he lives in you. It's a lovely little sort of reference. It's a nice little moment. And obviously, remember who you are.
Yeah.
And he comes back.
He comes back. He defeats Scar, who reveals that he was the one who killed Mufasa, and also that he doesn't like the hyenas. He ironically gets eaten by the hyenas. Everything is good again in the world, and the film ends with a new sort of birth of a new royal child.
It's almost like the
Simba
circle of life, isn't it? Where the film begins
don't they bring that
and
number
ends.
back at the end?
I think it's a reprise
to symbolise it.
Yeah. But yeah.
It's a very it's a very simple plot, really. As you say, it's very Shakespearean. It's like
tragedy.
It's like it's almost like a hero's journey thing as well, where it's like you have the steps of like Simba wants to go on an adventure around in the world, so he goes in pursuit of that. You have the complication, then you have the return. You have all that sort of stuff.
Return of the King.
But it's funny when you're talking about all the Spirit Dad stuff. It reminded me of another film with sort of supernatural glowy ghosts, and that of course is Black Panther.
I haven't seen Black Panther.
I believe that you watched a bit of it once when we were doing a Marvel marathon with one of our friends at uni. Yeah,
I remember seeing 5 seconds of it. I think
that was the one where I bailed for a few hours. No.
Spirit.
It's an alright movie. I don't really like it that much. It's not really for me. But there were a lot of and let's be honest, there were a lot of people who were not being good faith about this when they said this, but there were a lot of people who noticed a lot of similarities between Black Panther and another film set in Africa that involves royalty and a parent dying and a child taking over the mantle. And, there's complications with who's ruler.
Well, even less so. Obviously, there's a lot of films with a similar style, story sort of thing. But I love the people used to reference Frozen when that came out, and they're like, it's the new Lion King. And I'm like, I mean, just about, but not really. But it is, it's another royalty, exile.
The point with the Black Panther comparison is that they are very similar. Yeah. With other things added onto it, and that is not to take away from Black Panther and what it does get right, and also just is not to take away from how important that film is to certain communities and stuff like that. It just didn't resonate with me. That's fine. It doesn't have to.
It's no line.
Just because we don't like a film, or just because I don't like a film, or I like a film and someone doesn't mean that it's bad, necessarily. It is all relative in the grand scale, in the grand circle of life.
Yeah, and I mean, Lion King, as we said, isn't the most original thing, but I think it's the execution and it is...
But again, though, it has that unique sort of gloss over it of, it's animals, and it's in Africa. It's
stylized,
It's a very European story, though.
Yeah, it's an iconic sort of film, and is... in a lot of people's minds, one of the best renditions of a sort of that story, isn't it? So.
Well, I think it's just one that like all ages can enjoy as well. Like it works for the kids with all the goofy sort of stuff like that, and also how it conveys stuff in a very simple but effective manner. And then for the adults, it's like, you have, like proper character arcs and depth in there and stuff like that. And then, also, and adults nowadays with kids, just have the, luxury of just like, I'll just play on my phone instead of watching a film. So it doesn't even really matter. You could just make a film for the kids, and hell, they might be just playing on phones and stuff like that. So this is Boomer Jack moment right here. What I hate about phone. It's like it has a. I think it has a sort of, in its story capacity, a very timeless quality. I think I said this about Christmas Carol last time.
Yeah.
Some stories are like, they're very, especially as well with certain films who execute these stories and adapt them. Lion King will never age horribly. Its animation as well is so expressive and like fun and enjoyable. Like it's not like its proportions and that warp to when it needs to. I remember the scene in particular where it's the "I just can't wait to be king" sequence, where like they have all the animals doing like the weird sort of like like layered sort of.
There's stuff you can do in, especially like 90s era Disney animation.
Yeah.
It was probably the prime of, they could do what they want and make it look good, and they had a style to everything. It didn't have to look realistic, and they weren't as restricted as they used to be, in the 50s where they reused animations. They did whatever they wanted. And also,
I mean, as well, just from a writing, narrative, and like talent perspective, they didn't have like bigoted Walt standing over their like shoulder. Making sure that they couldn't do stuff. It's like, obviously these Disney films aren't exactly necessarily progressive, but they're not anti-progressive. They just are, and they have people involved. Like, for instance, Harold Ashman, who I mentioned before the podcast, who was a gay songwriter who worked on a few of the sort of Disney animated films in the late 80s and 90s. And you can tell his talent's like, extraordinary, and you can tell that he had impact on some of those stories. Namely because the two films that are at least at the very least certainly referenced as being, done by him, music-wise, are The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast. Stories about people not being able to show their true identity to certain people, almost like it's a parallel for being, like closeted gay or something. But you could sneak that stuff in the 90s Disney ones, and even queer code the villains and just make them fun and not offensive.
Yeah, that's. I mean, like every music and even every character in The Lion King, main character and side character for the most part, they're just. I like all of them.
I love Rowan Atkinson.
Yeah, I was going to say you got an all-star cast really. Cause you got
did I ever tell you I played Zazu in primary school?
Yeah, you did before, but you haven't told the audience.
I in primary school, so even earlier than when Joe did your Scar sort of rendition. I played Zazu in a primary school adaptation of The Lion King, and I want to say I did quite well for my age. But yeah, it's funny knowing that was Rowan Atkinson nowadays, because obviously I've not really watched this film, and I never really had access to it growing up. So looking at all these castings like Matthew Broderick, I was like, obviously everyone knows
90s.
Everyone knows that James Earl Jones is Mufasa.
Everything the light touches is our kingdom.
Yes.
Yeah, but then you got again Jeremy Irons, Matthew Broderick, Rowan Atkinson. What's his face as well? And I always forget his name, but Timon is also that guy.
Yeah, there's a famous comedian among them.
Yeah, I can't remember his name.
I can't remember either.
He's in The Birdcage with Robin Williams as well, but you know who I mean.
Nathan Lane.
Yep, Nathan Lane.
That's it. I had to briefly tab out for a second there to have a look.
No, Nathan Lane. Which again, you've played Zazu, I've played Scar and Timon before. And I love to do a good James L. Jones impression, but I'm not. But there's just so many voices and actors, and it's very good.
Yeah, it's very distinct.
Yeah.
Which is unlike the new one.
Yeah, I think, like, I don't have any inclination to watch the CGI remake. Which, again, I would say, you're like, oh, you know, Lion King, it is, like, it's passed the test of time thus far, which is why I was really weird. It's like, you know, they can remake, like, Lady and the Tramp is 100 years old. No, it's not. It's not quite 100 years old, but it is a very old film. But, yeah, it's like at least 70 years old, Lady and the Tramp, almost.
Yeah.
Whereas Lion King, when they remade it, was only like 25, about 20 years old or so, when they were like, yeah, let's remake it.
Like it's 2019, I believe.
Yeah, so it came out in the 90s, and they're like, in the 2010s, let's remake it. And they're remaking everything, and it's like, they don't need to remake films that came out less than 20 years ago. You know?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, well, it's just cynicism is all it is. It's just, okay, let's bank off of an established IP. It's the same reason that most reboots get made. It's just money.
Yeah, but then it's like, you know, they recast everyone except for James Earl Jones. It's like, well, why didn't you recast James Earl Jones, huh?
Well, I suppose who else could you get to do that, like, voice, really?
I know.
That style of voice. It's like, you couldn't really cast anyone else.
No, but that's the thing. I love the original so much, so I don't want them to recast anyone.
No. I just had a stupid idea, right? Why didn't they recast him as The Rock?
The Rock.
The Rock as Mufasa.
Yeah.
That would have been hilarious. Not because The Rock's a bad actor,
no,
but it would have been like, it's the done deal of, like, let's put The Rock in the next new movie. Everyone, like, every studio does that. Yeah. So it's like, let's put The Rock in this movie and he can be Mufasa. And he might not have done a bad job at it necessarily.
But it would be really weird to see, wouldn't it?
It's James Earl Jones. You know, it's like any person who's played the Joker since Heath Ledger. It's just like, it's not working, James.
And I mean, obviously, James Earl Jones is always the king father character, as you know. But he is your father. And, you know, he will die. Most likely.
Unless it's coming to America.
And
in which case, he'll just be really bigoted.
Yeah. But, yeah, James Earl Jones, iconic. All of it's iconic. Which is why, again, I don't, you know... What is it? Is it who plays Scar? Is it Idris Elba that plays Scar in the remake? Or am I making that up?
I think you're thinking of Cats.
No,
that's McCavity in Cats.
No, I think Idris Elba plays the tiger in Jungle Book remake, doesn't he?
I'll have a look.
He's the tiger in Jungle Book, the remake.
Okay. So Donald Glover is Simba.
Yeah.
Oh, it's Chiwetel Ejiofor is Scar. Yeah.
Because Idris is in Jungle Book remake.
Yeah. Seth Rogen is Pumbaa.
Mm.
And John Oliver is Zazu.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, it's not Rowan Atkinson, is it? It's not.
Wait. Keegan-Michael Key is Ed. Who the fuck's Ed?
The
Beyonce is Nala.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. No, Ed is one of the hyenas.
Oh,
what do you think,
that makes
Ed?
a lot more sense.
Yeah.
You know, it's because the other he's the first of the hyenas to be like listed in the cast. That's why. Yeah, because then you have Eric Andre as Banzai.
Again, I just love the original too much. Like, the new one may have some good qualities to it, but...
But here's the thing. The new one only has good qualities in the respect that the technology is impressive and it helped make, like, The Mandalorian. That's it. That's all it is.
As we've mentioned, I think we were going to mention before the whole facial animation thing, where they can do a lot more in an old animated film, cartoon animated, than they can where they're trying to make it look real, and then... Just
hand animated. Is like any kind of like 2D hand animated or even like 3D with here's the thing, like 3D CGI is not bad necessarily. It's how you use it. Just like 2D isn't bad necessarily because of its faults. 2D, for instance, requires a hell of a lot of work, and if you do cut corners, it's very noticeable. In 3D, because it's CGI animated, you can animate it a lot easier and do a lot more interesting and radical things with it. But it all depends on the vision and the usage of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, with the Jungle Book and Lion King remakes, the intention going in was, we are going to make photorealistic animals. That was the mistake.
Mm-hmm.
The intention, not the technology
No.
or the abilities of doing 3D, for instance. If you just did a 3D animated one that was entirely animated, then that would have worked. Or that could have worked, rather.
It's facts.
It's entirely to do with the philosophy of people making it.
they-
And that is that Disney didn't care. They were just like, let's try and, throw some money at making this new technology that, might help us, have to spend less money to make films, which is what it is. And also because it's Jon Favreau, and Favreau wants to develop this technology. Let's get that as our PR, and we'll get like some star-studded, characters, from nowadays to come in and do the characters. But other than that, you could just whatever philosophy. We just want to make money. This thing will make money regardless because it has the Lion King name on it. Some people might just think when they go and see it, oh, it's just going to be a new showing of the Lion King because they're not paying attention. And they'll be like, oh, what the fuck's this? When they get in there, kids aren't going to give a shit. They'll either like it or they won't. Who cares? I'm Disney. I'm Mr. Disney. Go fuck yourself. That's Disney's approach. And then for Jon Favreau, it's like, well, Jon Favreau is a very smart and a very good and capable filmmaker, but he doesn't mean he's 100%. The Mandalorian is very good, and technically that is a fucking masterpiece anyway, because it's the full potential of the usage of using surround LED screen studios, so that you don't have to do blue screen and green screen and key out things. You can do photorealistic renders as your background in the background, and it will match with the lighting. It will match with perspective shots if you can program it into your cameras and movements. Basically, you can now shoot movies from a small warehouse, and that is insanely amazing and interesting, and you get the light all photorealistically perfect. However, in these two films, Jungle Book and the Lion King remakes, Jon Favreau made the wrong decision, or whoever made the decision in the first place made the wrong decision of let's make this look like a nature program with realistic lions.
Lions can't
That's the problem.
Smile or laugh.
No, they can't. So, and this is the thing, is that people assume that voice acting in things as well is oh, you're putting 100% of the life into it. But no, it's a marriage of both what you are voicing, as in what's being animated, or the motion capture that you're doing in certain roles, and it's how you sell it in your voice performance. And if it's just the voice performance, and even if the voice performance is just average, and you have this crap in front of you where it's just it's a lion and its mouth is opening and saying words.
The difference between a talking lion and a talking character.
Exactly. Not only is it so trippy to look at, you think it sounds like a fucking a bad hallucinogenic trip is what I'm saying. But also it's just what the it does not work.
And yet,
basically, it's the general gist of it.
Yeah, and yet there are people I know that are I prefer the CGI Lion King, and I'm you can die.
Philistines.
But yeah, other than that, the remakes are a thing, but I still love the original. I just out of pure moral, I can never watch the remake. It would hurt me too much.
I've seen it. It's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is just that I think we have to kind of think about it like this: is that everyone remembers the Lion King 1994. I feel like most people have forgotten about the 2019 Lion King by now. That, I think, should say volumes, or speak volumes, about the effect of the first movie.
Yeah.
Over this crap.
A Disney
basically.
classic.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's a cemented Disney classic, and it's just good. Go watch the original Lion King.
Yeah. Don't you dare watch the remakes.
Don't
give Disney your money. From one circle of life to another.
Yes. So So the next film that we're talking about today is my pick, and this is not really something. This is very different to what you've picked, not just in philosophies or culture or anything like that. There are similarities, as I said before, but this one's weird in that this is a film that I've only been aware of for a few years, and I've only seen for I'd first seen a few years back, and it's I love it. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. But it is a recent one, so it's not like I have a long history with this, but I do have a fairly lengthy history with the producer of this film, because I was aware of their work for a long time. I'd seen tons of bits of one of their more generic films, and by generic, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's like more emblematic of what you get, and that film is Spirited Away. This film that we're talking about here today is Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind. A Studio Ghibli film. In fact, Nausicaä is the very first Studio Ghibli film, technically speaking, because it was the film that established the studio.
And
it's a Studio Ghibli film, so it's a Japanese anime film. So this is obviously very different from what we've covered on here.
What?
But yeah, it's very good. At least as an initial impression, I'd like to just get that right off the back. It is one of my favourite films of all time.
So,
and Joe, you had never seen this before, had you?
Well, I'd never seen a Studio Ghibli film before.
Yes. Yes.
I have many a friend who's like, "Oh, Studio Ghibli's pretty good. There's a lot of good films there." Nausicaä, I'd heard of the name before, but I didn't know anything about it. We watched it together, and I was quite surprised. I knew it'd be. I was expecting something of quality. I was like, it must. People had said things about the Ghibli, but when I watched it, I was like, you know what? This film's actually pretty good. It's got style, it's got aesthetic, it's got story, it's got emotion, and the animation is pretty cool. I didn't really have any complaints about this film, and I'd definitely rewatch it. Like, I only watched it once thus far, but I'm like, I'd probably rewatch it at some point soon just to give it another going over, because it was very good.
Yeah, no, and I think it's really nice to hear that, because I was quite worried to begin with, because I mainly not because I didn't think you would recognize the good aspects of it, but just because I know that you're not an anime guy. I kind of am, but I'm also kind of not. I very much despise the culture surrounding the fans and stuff like that, who the kind of the otaku shit, where it's weeaboos and stuff. I like the art. I like the integrity, the artistic expression. I like the stories. I don't like the weird sort of make this my entire life stuff. Unless we're talking about Berserk, in which case I really can't defend that. I love that franchise to bits, warts and all. So, but I'm a big fan of of Studio Ghibli stuff. I've still not seen a massive amount of their catalog because they have so much. Like Disney, they have a ton of films out there, but some are not created, the same as others. They're not all created equally. And there are ones that are just, stick out as the best, basically. But yeah, but in terms of my history with anime, for instance, I mostly like movies rather than shows. So I'm a big fan of Ghost in the Shell, Akira. I very much like the cyberpunk influence and stuff like that. And I'd love to talk about that in a different video, with Joe's permission for me to gush over that shit. But we won't be doing it. Never mind. We won't be talking about it. This is the last time. This is the last time we talk about any of these crappy films. Anime sucks. It does, to be fair. The vast majority of it is kind of crap. Again, but
I didn't go into it expecting anime. I went into it being this is an animated film. I'm going to see what it...
And I think that's the right approach for any of that genre, really. It's just treat it as another genre of film or TV, rather than this is this creepy thing that started out as a thing for kids. It's like Lion King, for instance. You watch that as an adult, it's for kids quite clearly, but there are things that speak to you as an adult, like death and rebirth and stuff like that are very like I think they're very integral to the philosophies of life and stuff like that. And I think Nausicaä has that too.
Yeah.
So Nausicaä. So I'll briefly do the rundown of the plot of Nausicaä, then we'll get into all the details of what it's about with animation and music and and all the meta stuff. But for now, I'll try and do a brief rundown. This one's a bit more complicated in that its story kind of goes in zigzag directions a lot of the time. But this one is also kind of, it's got like a few sort of stars in it, namely Sir Patrick Stewart. I can't remember the character's name, but he plays the sort of wandering swordsman with a big old beard. Yeah, no, I'm just getting confused between some of the names of the other. It's like I'm an anglicized man. I don't know. I don't know these names, unfortunately.
Yeah, the Hat Man.
Nausicaä's an easy name to remember because it's on the box, and also everyone says it all the time, and it's a very memorable name. Nausicaä, by the way, is a great name. Yeah. But yeah, our main character Nausicaä. Basically, she's surveying and sort of scavenging through this wasteland, which is the world after some sort of apocalyptic event. It's hinted that it might have been supernatural. At least that's how it started.
Giant bugs and stuff.
The giant warriors, yeah. No, the bugs came later. So the giant warriors blew up the world. But but again, the history of this is so far beyond our timeline and our current time that it's not indicated whether or not the world itself was created by nuclear fallout. It is hinted at that it might be that, and that the giant warriors was something that came after to sort of like cleanse the remainder of humanity and destroy major civilizations after like they kept warring after the apocalypse started. So basically, every time there's like like wars and stuff, the bugs or the warriors come basically, and they destroy those civilizations. So humanity is very scarce. They can't really survive in the majority of the world because it's sort of infected with toxic fungus, a la Last of Us. But it doesn't turn you into a zombie; it just sort of kills you basically, and that. But it's this very unique looking apocalyptic world where everything is some sort of form of fungus, and it's got like dandelion sort of spores and stuff like that everywhere. There's the spores everywhere. It looks like sort of like almost like ash or snowfall. And there's these giant sort of bugs called the Ohm, who are sort of like these old ones who are sort of feared by humanity and sort of treated as these vicious animals. But by Nausicaä, she can kind of, even at the beginning, recognize that the Ohm are just a part of life, and she tries to go throughout her entire life basically not hurting anyone and trying to find solutions to get around violence.
She's the bug whisperer.
She can she has a bit of a connection with nature, and that she's able to do some things and feats that other people are unable to do. And Patrick Stewart's character is even able to recognize this quite early on. But she saves him from an Ohm that's attacking him after he's sort of running away from a settlement. He didn't mean to sort of, cause it, but, they run away. She manages to basically lure the Ohm off with some flares and, like, a chime. And it's like, I mean, this Ohm is this giant thing that is, it's a very impressive looking creature anyway, but the scale of it is vastly larger than anything human related. But they go back to the Valley of the Wind, which is where Nausicaä has grown up, and is a sort of frequent home to the Patrick Stewart character, who likes this place. It's very peaceful. It's very like nice and hilly, and it's got like windmills, and it's basically looks like the last sort of bastion of true life out there. You've got like proper plants and water that are healthy and aren't toxic or anything like that. But they have to be super careful, because if even one spore gets into any of their sort of plant life or water culture, it will completely destroy their civilization. So everyone is super careful, but everyone's super nice and sort of caring for each other. Every time there's a baby born in the village, it's this giant sort of event. Everyone's got this specific nice fashion to them. They've all when they are in toxic jungles, they wear these sort of mustache masks that make them look a bit like sort of raccoon whiskers. The art design is phenomenal, but basically they live in peace, and then all of a sudden an airship, like a sort of weird sort of steampunk technical airship that's very different from anything they have, it crashes in the valley and it starts spreading spores, and it drops a sort of egg, some sort of like, embryo that might be an embryo for one of these warriors, these proto-beings that destroyed the world 1,000 years ago. And so everyone is on edge. It's from a nation that is very hostile to others, and everyone's very much worried that it's going to bring more doom and destruction. And more importantly, Nausicaä finds a princess from a different nation that they are warring against. I think the Tolmekians and the other ones. I can't remember. The other ones, the Tolmekians are the sort of the ones that are in like knight armor, and they come in and they afterwards they invade the. You said they were the Nazis. I think they're kind of like Crusader knights. But they have a sort of like
military.
They have a feel of like Nazi soldiers taking over a French town. The princess of this other nation, she dies, and they bury all of the crew in that. Tolmekians come and they fucking invade violently and hard, murdering villagers and murdering the king of the Valley of the Wind, leaving Nausicaä as the sole leader of the entire valley and main hostage to the sort of the leader general, who is this woman with a sort of metal armor arm. She's like the sort of like the general or whatever. She kind of gets treated like royalty, but it's like the roles of society are kind of mixed up and stuff like that. Like, it's sort of emblematic of history and current roles, but they're sort of all mixed and blended together to have their own sort of effects. But basically, they take Nausicaä as a hostage, and a few other sort of members of the Valley of the Wind as hostages, so that they can return to Tolmekiä and get the Valley of the Wind to join them in their war against the other ones. But along the way, they get shot down. Like the entire convoy gets shot down by this one solo pilot from the other nation, with the exception of the one that Nausicaä is on, because, done with this violence, she gets out onto the back of the ship and just like screams at the pilot to stop. And seeing this on his way over, he tries desperately to like pull up and avoid it at the last second, and he gets damaged and he falls into the toxic forest, as does everyone else. But on their way down, they sort of rescue the sort of glider filled with all of their friends, but they all land in the toxic forest, toxic jungle, and they're greeted by the Ohm, who then have like this weird sort of avatar moment with Nausicaä, where they have these little tendrils that come out, and they sort of have a psychic connection with Nausicaä, know that everything's okay, they move on. But everything in the toxic jungle is starting to move and sort of, get like woken up. So it's implied that they're assembling to go do something, and it's all very vague and ominous. But at the very least, the pilot of the other nation has started shooting at bugs in the toxic jungle and getting everyone riled up, for which then Nausicaa's like, okay, I gotta go deal with this idiot. Everyone else, you get the hell out of the toxic jungle, fly above, and if I'm not back in 2 hours, leave without me. So I went on for a bit there, just because there's a lot of intricacies, but yeah, it's a very powerful story about, like, how people fuck with nature, and how nature isn't really out there to hurt people, but only sort of, fight back and defend itself.
Yeah.
But also how other people can be shitty to each other, basically, for seemingly no reason other than just, like, we can be. We'll start wars just for the sake of it, just because of the sake of, like, oh, maybe somebody, like, shot this person, and then, like, well, how did this war start? Well, the other one started it. We're just, defending ourselves, and everyone has that philosophy. It's like, we're just defending ourselves. But it's complacency for an excuse for violence, basically.
No, there's a lot going on in it, but yeah, it's just different viewpoints, Yeah. As I said, there's a military group, there's the peaceful group, and then there's just the other group that are all doing things wrong and right, and just causing trouble on each other. So
the Valley of the Wind really are like the only sort of faction who are just like, we just want to leave shit alone, and we just want to live peacefully.
But
like, get the fuck out of here.
No, but it is the arrival of other people that mess up their land as well. And
yeah, it's kind of like colonialism in a way, in a very broad sort of comparison. Not saying anything specifically towards like race or anything, but in like a cultural sense, like other people coming in and fucking with rural indigenous life, basically.
I found the film to be quite. Well, obviously, there's some fun sections in it, but obviously, it's for the majority, it's quite
quite dark.
Yeah, it's dark and sort of you have to pay attention to just sort of, I was invested in the world. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, I think the world building is one of the strongest elements of this film. Like, how everything has sort of been made with a specific purpose. Like the gliders, for instance, have been made for the Valley of the Wind, because that valley is a big funnel for wind, basically. And that's how they power everything. And so of course they would build crafts that sort of could, utilize that to their advantage.
But yeah, it's like it was a really interesting film. Like a lot of it, to be fair, not much. There's a lot going on, but there's not a lot going on, because it is just they're going about their daily lives. They get invaded. There's a conflict, a bit of a riot, and then Nausicaä saves them from the bugs. That's pretty much it. But
that's the thing, is it goes in zigzag directions, but it is very. It's got a very I think this is just something with Studio Ghibli's films in general, and also just a difference in cultural sort of storytelling. Those films kind of all just have a sort of, and then this thing happens, and then the characters react to it. Because it's not, like, the plot itself, it all makes sense, but it's not, like, predictable in a, this is the hero's journey necessarily thing. It's like, you can apply a lot of different stuff to it. And that's not to say that it's wholly unique either. It might be that it's very common in Japanese culture that these stories are, in the structure that they are. I don't know, so I can't really say, but they have, like, simple elements, but they're interspersed in unique ways. Where it's like, okay, it's all about how characters deal with certain situations and how their relationships grow. They're very character-focused, I feel, and I think that works for, an environment where, you're doing a lot of, character expressions and how they're animating and the adventure that they're going on. Ghibli films are all very adventurous, even in like this one and like Princess Mononoke, when there's darker elements in there about the state of the world and humanity. It's a little bit different from, like, say, Ghost in the Shell, where that is really about, like, the world, and the characters are sort of, like, purposefully a little more bland. It's because their identities are sort of less, it's less about their sense of identity being fulfilled, but rather it being unfulfilled. And so, in a lot, in Ghibli films at least, every character has a distinct sort of feeling and an emotion and like a worldview, like you were saying. Nausicaä is very competent, and she's also very caring and empathetic. And like, you can tell that in her design as well. She's got a very warm design to her character. Her hair and earrings, and a sort of very simple, smooth face. And even like the fact that all of the sort of things she wears are some form of sort of like there's some form of sort of elegant dress with no sort of like there's no sort of combat applicability to what she wears, but it's also in a sort of sense where, like, there is utility put into her outfit, so you can tell that she's somebody who isn't helpless, and she does actually have skills. Whereas, like, the Tolmekians, for instance, are very, like, old knights, and, like, they have the other sort of faction of the Tolmekians is very sort of, like, they look a bit like Soviet soldiers and tank pilots and stuff like that, and they have tanks and stuff like that, so it's all very utilitarian, whereas the knights Tolmekians are very sort of like, we need to look fancy because we're important, basically. There's like key design in the characters that is very important to why you connect with them, and they have the Valley of the Wind has a very rural feeling to a lot of their technology and people.
Mustache
the beard
clan.
Every man must have a mustache at the very least, and maybe a beard. But yeah, and then you have like just the animation itself is like I love with the sound design as well. The feeling that just watching Nausicaä flying on her glider gives me. It has a very freeing nature and a very liberating feeling. Watching the sort of movement and momentum from the airships, the smaller ones obviously, because the larger ones are very large and so I think they almost resemble matte paintings. And I know for a fact that the Ohm were actually not done 2D or 3D. They were done 3D, but not 3D technology CG wise. They were done stop motion with pieces of paper. So that's why they sort of have that sort of push and pull sort of design with their shell, is because they were actually stop motion animating those, I think, on paper on animated backgrounds basically, and that's why they look like that. But it's so much effort and probably not what they needed for that. But it looks really good. They're blended perfectly, I think. Even though you can quite clearly tell that they look like they have that sort of design of like that looks different to this, like that looks like it's in a different sort of color grade or whatever. But I think there's no like matte lines or anything like that because they're not digitally adding them in.
No, I loved the style of it, to be honest. I didn't find any issues in the animation. It all looked very, as I said, I was invested in the world, and I liked how everything looked and moved. And
I will say the music. You did have a few comments with that when we were watching that together.
I can't even remember now. What was it?
You said that it sounded very sort of 80s beat 'em up video game in some instances, which I'm not sure if I necessarily got. It definitely feels like sort of some of the music is very 80s first.
Yeah,
off,
I think
I don't know if
there might have been a couple of sequences where the music picked up a bit more than it needed to, and it was just sort of like you've entered boss phase 2, I think is what I said. It was like you entered a new phase of the boss because the music was continuous, but it sort of upgraded. It's very
unique and very out there, but I think that adds to like the world itself and like again like the toxic jungle being basically like spores and mold. Yeah, and
I mean it's fine because
it has a very out of their sort of factor, and I think the music really does sell the world with all the other stuff.
Yeah, I think most of it was very good. It's just because it was constant. There's a lot of sections where it's like, oh, this went wrong, and then this enemy shows up, and these people show up. The music has to obviously account for that, and it's like, oh, look, there's things are happening. But I loved it. It's not that I have a major problem with it, but it did feel like it was a bit video gamey at times, which is fine. But it's like, you've hit the next level of the boss.
It would make a really good Legend of Zelda type game, like the Nausicaä sort of world, and even that character, like how Link can sort of use like a leaf to glide around. You could use like a glider and stuff. And I think Nate Jackie made a video on that. So.
And then obviously you got I was just looking at a picture. You've got Pikachu as well.
Yes, I can't remember the name of the
little
character,
Pikachu character, which looks identical to Pikachu, but is not.
The fox squirrel.
Fox squirrel. Yeah. He's a cute one, but
yeah, I'm guessing that was the inspiration for Pikachu, because this kit did come out before all of the Pokemon stuff. Even that character, that small little fox squirrel, is part of Nausicaä's character. Yeah, I love this film. It's utterly fantastic.
It's a nice film.
It's both like. It's like cynical and optimistic where it needs to be, and it's still very wholesome in certain parts. And it has a very good message, basically, of just like, don't be a dick, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously, I did make comparisons to The Lion King with it earlier, saying like they're very similar in like I guess like your setup for the story of like these are your players, this is your royalty prince/princess. They need to become the leader by the end. Nausicaä does go in very different directions and doesn't really focus on that as much. Nausicaä kind of places more of a focus of like leadership and all that as like a group sort of thing. she's a bit sort of socialist, really, and I think that really fits in with Hayao Miyazaki's sort of philosophy, because I think he's said that he's a very sort of socialist individual. He's a very... This is one of the funny things. Hayao Miyazaki's kind of seen as a... His characters and world are all very, like, you know, lovely and lively and very wholesome, and yet he as an individual is very unhappy with the state of the world. It's quite clear, you can tell from that, really. I think it's in spite of that you know, these things really work. I think that's sometimes you need a guy like that to be a complete polar opposite to his source material.
I mean, I always love one. That's the thing. I love these films because they're both. I love a mixture of, you know, optimism and dark. I like the dark stuff, but I like obviously some light stuff as well. So these films, I think that goes with
any story. Yeah. Is that, like, I think that's why grimdark stories don't work as being wholly dark. And the people who don't think that, I mean, just, I guess, listen to what I'm about to say and just, you know, take it in. The only reason grimdark as a concept works is a juxtaposition of light elements, and if you just, like, have a story where only dark stuff happens and all our characters fail and like nothing gets accomplished and stuff like that, it can work sometimes, but the gimmick wears so thin that if you do it far too much, people will give up and they won't care, because what's the point if you take such a nihilist sort of perspective to your work? Then there's nothing for the audience to really put their investment in at the end of the day. You can have dark elements, but really, as well, with, like, a message, what are you trying to say as an artist? Are you just trying to say, like, there's literally no point to anything, and we shouldn't even try? That's a terrible message, and even if that's what you believe, you should seek to better how things are. You should seek to better the spirit of other people and yourself. So I think that people who think grimdark is everything and, like, you know, optimism is for cowards or whatever, it's like, well, you're kind of a fucking intellectual coward if you think that grimdark and not having any sense of optimism in your story is both an intelligent move and also just, like, one that's narratively satisfying. No, the reason why Empire Strikes Back works, and yes, now we've brought up Star Wars on my end, is because you have both Star Wars and Return of the Jedi to give you that positive sort of ending. So it juxtaposes that when the Empire are on top, that is an impactful moment. When they win in Empire Strikes Back, when Darth Vader cuts off Luke Skywalker's hand and tells him that he is his dad, that is impactful. So much more than if all three of those films were just like, the Empire's gonna win, why do we even bother? My favorite color is black and I wear eyeliner all the time. You know, I just feel like I was into Star Wars before it was cool. You know, like, I can't deal with those sorts of people. I remember
life.
Some of my friends talk about, like, how the alternate ending for Return of the Jedi, which was going to be called Revenge of the Jedi, where Luke puts on Darth Vader's helmet, talk about that would have been so much better. I'm like, of all the problems of Return of the Jedi, that's not the one that would have needed to be fixed. That's what the fuck are you talking about? Like, by that point in the story, what the fuck do you think would compel Luke to do that? He's literally just gone, oh yeah, I threw my lightsaber away and I'm not going to fight back and kill people. I'm not going to kill my own father. My father just saved me from the evil man. Oh yeah, better become evil now, even though my dad just became good. What the fuck are you talking about? And people say, oh, that'd be so much cooler. Just because they think of the simple, like, surface level edginess of it.
Well,
grow the fuck up.
Nausicaa.
Sorry.
Nausicaa's good, though.
Sorry. I'm turning into Hayao Miyazaki.
Nausicaa's good, though.
Yes, Nausicaa's good.
Should we...
I guess we'll close it off with our thoughts, yeah. Alright, Joe. So let's just wrap her up. These are two of our favourite films, but we might as well let's give a fucking rating. Let's give a goodbye, and we'll leave these people to enjoy their new year.
Yeah. So
Lion King, what are we thinking?
I love a good lion, but Lion King's always, you know, it's the one I entered into this episode. So
yeah,
I'ma just slap on that number. Let's go for 9.2 for Lion King.
Okay, 9.2. That's very good. Yeah. I'm gonna put it at a. how about this? I'll put it in 8.7.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
8.7 because it needs to really be a 9, but I can't really put it up there for me personally.
Mm-hmm. But yeah.
Okay. Nausicaä, Joe.
I did actually quite like Nausicaä, so I'll give it an 8.8.
Okay. I will give Nausicaä a 9.2. We're getting into those decimals. 9.2. I absolutely adore both of these films, but I think I love Nausicaä in that it's one that I recently came across, and so like I've had less exposure to it. But even then, it's like what exposure I have had to it, it's just so effective. The world is so unique. Like I love Lion King, but obviously it's going for a very traditional feel, and that obviously comes off in its setting as well. Is that like it's animals in Africa. It's a location that is not alien to us, and that's part of that film. It's not a slight against it whatsoever. But for me, I think I just love the world, the characters,
of Nausicaä.
The uniqueness. Yes, I love how unique it is and how it it works with films like Princess Mononoke in the Studio Ghibli library so well. Those two are a great like double feature, I think. I mean, a lot of those films are really good, but yeah, there are ones like Spirited Away where it's like it's a bit more generic and a bit more like let's do the wholesome side of this rather than having any of the cynical stuff sneak its way in. Even though it always typically ends with an optimistic ending. But yeah, I mean that's it's been a year, Joe. It's been a year. These are two of our favorite films. That's the entire premise of this episode. I don't really know where to go with it after that.
Films, they're good.
Yeah. I guess watch more films. Yeah, watch these films for certain. But I guess if we had like a New Year's resolution, Joe, or something like that, what would you think of one? Like a New Year's resolution or wish? What have you got?
Exist better.
Exist better. You know what? I hope I'm gonna wish to another year of 2MoreTakes shenanigans. I think.
Yeah.
Because it's been a really fun year. It's been very stressful at times. I mean, even
been all right.
On our modest sort of production, but it's been fun. And I wouldn't have chosen anyone else to sort of share in this journey with.
Hate you.
Maybe one of the Ollies though.
Okay.
I got a lot of them to pick from, so.
Nice.
But yeah.
No, it's just fun to have a little chat about films. And again, I've seen some new films that I've not known. Again, Nausicaä's a new one for me.
Yeah.
It's fun to watch. So.
And I think there's been a few that you've introduced that I haven't, or at the very least we've both been introduced to, because I think neither of us had seen Hellraiser and stuff like that earlier on in the year. So there are a lot where it's both films we've seen before in the past, and we've done very much like nostalgia stuff, and we will continue to do that with 2MoreTakes. I know I have teased the idea of doing a different kind of show for newer releases, but as it stands at the moment, I don't know how realistic that is to our lifestyles at the moment. But hopefully we can continue to keep producing 2MoreTakes podcast. I love it to death. It may be the death of me, maybe the death of Joe. But we're glad that you're all here with us as well, sharing in our journey.
Been a pleasure doing business with you. Thanks for listening, I guess.
And go fuck yourself, San Diego.
Okay.
Goodbye, guys.
See you later.
People. Bye!